Across the Fence, we're off to 4-H Sheep Camp. We'll find out how 4-H members around the state are learning about science, math, and farm finance while caring for and raising their woolly friends. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. For generations, 4-H has offered hands-on programs in which kids learn by doing. Through UVM Extension, today's 4-H continues to offer programs that provide young people with lifelong skills with an emphasis on STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. To find out more, my first guest this afternoon is Wendy Sorrell. Wendy is the UVM Extension 4-H livestock educator. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Now, there's a lot of emphasis now on STEAM, and how is that addressed in 4-H?
I think in 4-H, what a lot of people tend to think about is it's a fun, informal atmosphere. So we forget that we're actually learning science. For example, in the horse program, we have a contest called Hippology. That's the study of the horse. It's a 4-phase contest, and they can be asked anything from the color genetics or the breeds, the skeletal system, or how many teeth does a horse have at a certain age.
That's a lot to know.
It is a lot to know.
And so does this type of education happen in other areas of 4-H as well?
Sure. Just to give another example, we have a contest called the Dairy Challenge. That's 4 workshops, a series of 4 workshops that the kids spend about a half an hour learning about part of the time and then testing on what they just learned. And one of the things that we've had is an udder. We actually had a frozen udder donated by cows, and the kids got to dissect it, put on rubber gloves, and poke their way through the udder. We've talked about diseases in cattle and how it affects them and how we prevent them, and just a series of workshops of learning on science.
And so today we're going to be spending some time talking about Sheep Camp. What is Sheep Camp?
Oh, Sheep Camp is a fun weekend where you can go, bring your sheep, and learn everything there is to know about sheep. And we have had it at Addison County Fair and Field Day grounds.
So what are some of the workshops this year, and how do they relate to areas like science or math?
Well, we've had wool dyeing, which kids take food coloring and a microwave, and they're actually seeing how heat affects the wool and the dye and how it sets it. So there's science right there. We've had breed selection. What breed of sheep do you want to have? What can it do for you? And does it work here in Vermont, whether you want a meat breed or a wool breed? We've had finance for the older kids. It was a first-time workshop where the kids are learning about record keeping and finance and loans. So that was a new one. We've had genetics. We've had parasites, where they're learning how parasites affect sheep and how to prevent them. There's more, but I just can't think of them right now.
Well, it's interesting because, you think a 4-H sheep club would be a lot of fun. You get the little woolly lambs and you get to play with them, but there's a whole lot more to it than that, and making sure that your animal stays healthy, for one thing.
There is, and that, again, is the emphasis. We're in an informal setting. You're not in a classroom setting, and so kids don't realize, hey, we're doing science. And I think we have to be a little more deliberate about letting them know that it is science and they can do it, and it is fun.
And also, too, to see the end result of a healthy, happy sheep.
Exactly, because you can't have a sheep at home and have it get sick and not know what to do about it and rely on the vet, because the vet might not be available every single second that you need them.
And vets can be expensive.
They can be expensive.
Which goes back to, part of your training about financing.
Exactly, so you have to do a budget. In the record book that the kids are looking at, they're doing a budget. They might know what the costs are, what their equipment costs, what it costs to bring a sheep from point A to point B, what vaccinations, what do you have to have, like the rabies and the scrapies tag. And so they have to know what it costs. And so it's a real eye-opener for a lot of the kids.
Well, our Across the Fence's Keith Silva spent some time at camp, and let's see what he discovered.
Here's something to keep in mind when working with sheep. It might get loud. A few loud baas, and several more, is the soundtrack of 4-H Sheep Camp. The annual event brings Vermont 4-Hers together to learn, brush up on their skills, and have fun.
You get to bring a sheep, and you meet a bunch of other people who like sheep, like how you like them and stuff. And you learn a bunch of stuff, but it's also fun, and you get to do fun crafts like the wool dyeing, so that's fun too.
With the knowledge you learn here, you can use it for your own flock, or if someone doesn't know what to do, you can share your knowledge with them.
We learn to work with different people. We learn about problem solving. If something goes wrong, you need to be able to make it work. all kinds of skills about learning and growing and working with people and your community. I mean, I could go on and on.
These 4-H'ers take part in a variety of workshops, from getting a sheep ready for the show ring to wool dyeing.
If you want to experiment with different ones, experiment with different ones.
Have a helmet
from
on
farm
for
safety-
riding your bike. Is it a good idea to get on a horse with that biking helmet?
No.
To farm finance.
Here's where you can put all your expenses.
Each activity incorporates the educational curriculum known as STEAM, short for science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. 4-H educator Wendy Sorrell believes STEAM goes hand in hand with the 4-H model of learning by doing.
They might not know that they're learning science when they're doing the genetics and conformation and picking out the right sheep or what breed does what. But then we say to them, okay, this is science. And so they get that exposure in that fun, informal setting, which is what 4-H does. It's kind of like this ripple effect. So we start out at sheep camp and we throw that pebble that says you're doing science, and then the leaders take it back to their club, and then it goes back to families. So we have that ripple effect that lets people know that science can be fun.
Cindy Floor is a 4-H club leader. For her, the science in 4-H is inherent and apparent.
In terms of science, it's almost by osmosis. The science is built in. You're not saying, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to do sheep science today. It's just built into the animal husbandry part of it, and they get it. It's not really by design. It's more by, you have to learn this because if your sheep's sick, what are you going to do?
This is Siri Swanson's 5th year attending 4-H sheep camp. Each year reminds her that what's good for the sheep is also good for the 4-H'er.
I can apply what I learn about husbandry to them, kind of to myself sometimes. You can relate, like if they have a cut, I know how to treat it. So if I got a really bad cut, I honestly learn more about taking care of sheep to be able to take care of myself sometimes.
4-H requires participants to keep record books and track costs. It's another not so sheepish way that 4-H helps hone math skills.
You learn a lot of math when you go into like buying sheep and selling them, and you have to have like a price range and know how much you're spending on grain and hay, because that comes up to like a lot of money because you have to spend stuff on grain, but then you can also sell sheep for a lot of money too.
Brian Mason judges sheep at fairs and field days in Vermont.
Why come here and work with these kids?
Because somebody did it for me, I guess, and then I enjoy working with the kids, and you can see some results. I'll see these kids later on in the fall at the fall shows, and I'll see that they have sharpened their skills a little bit, and maybe I had a little bit to do with that. Quite a lot of it is learning what not to do, but it's also it's all learning by doing, because you can't explain something to somebody until they realize they are doing it the wrong way once they do it the right way. So it's big hands-on. It's big hands-on. Experience is huge.
Getting them used to that is not putting them up there.
After 2 years working with sheep, 12-year-old Rebecca Moriarty knows what her sheep should look like and how to achieve her goals.
You try to get the sheep so it looks kind of like a block. You want it to be very like straight, everything to be straight, and you want its loin to look long, and you really, before you start cutting, you look at the sheep and you look at its faults and you try to correct its faults. And I really enjoy clipping its belly and usually you would cut with my sheep, I cut its belly really short, so it looks like it's longer.
The experience 4-H'ers receive from working with livestock at events like sheep camp promote skills these young men and women will use for the rest of their lives.
You can learn leadership, so you can take part in community services, and you can form your own group and then do things for your community.
If you go anywhere in the world, if you leave for college, or even if you go to visit a family member somewheres, you need to be able to handle a situation you're not used to. It's not your hometown, or even just going to a new school maybe. So if you have some experience with that, some background, and you kind of maybe aren't so uncomfortable, you got your feet on the ground a little bit, it can definitely help you. 4-H, it's made a big difference in my life for sure.
Hands-on learning while working together and having fun. Call it the science of 4-H. In Vergennes, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith. Joining me now is one of the sheep camp participants and one of the volunteer 4-H leaders. Becca Parent is a 4-H member from Orwell, and her mom, Kathleen, is a 4-H leader. Thanks so much for coming in. Now, Becca, tell me, how did you first get interested in the sheep project?
When I was young, me and one of my friends had an older friend that did 4-H and had sheep, and we would talk to her about it, and she would tell us about all the fun stuff that she did, and so we thought we'd give it a try. And so I leased sheep from her for 2 years before I got my first sheep.
And so has being in 4-H helped you in science in school?
It definitely has. It's taught me about the body and how the body systems work together, and really opened my eyes as to how science applies to real life.
Mm-hmm. And does that make it more interesting to you?
It does. It intrigues me to find out more about how I can apply it to my life.
And so what are you thinking in the future? Do you think that this is something that you'll continue with?
Definitely. I want my kids to be involved. I think it's just great for everyone.
Now, Kathleen, tell me a little bit about getting started with Becca. Were you also learning along the way? Did you have any sheep experience?
We had no sheep experience at all. It has been a learning process and is still a learning process.
I know. I was watching clipping, and I was like, I don't know if I could do that. That's kind of nerve-wracking, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as the video showed, experience is everything. Practice and practice and more practice.
And through 4-H, Kathleen, have you seen Becca and other youngsters that you work with kind of grow?
Yes, tremendously. It has been fun to watch. Becca started when she was about 7, I think, to see her knowledge in the sheep area grow, her confidence grow, her communication skills grow, and those of all of her friends that I have watched come up through the program as well.
And so tell me a little bit about your experience with 4-H. Were you a 4-H person when you were growing up?
I was not. We would go to the fair. I was part of Grange, so I would see all of the 4-H kids there. Our real first experience with sheep was with my aunt and uncle. They have a farm in Richford, so that's Kate and Chet Parsons. And so I think Becca's first experience, she was 2. We went up to their lamb day, and she got to bottle feed some lambs, and it just went from there.
I can see how you could get hooked on that. That's pretty cute. Yeah. So what breed of sheep do you have?
I have Romney sheep. They're primarily a wool breed, but they can be dual purpose, used for meat as well.
And so tell me a little bit about some of the things that you've done and learned as being part of 4-H besides, what you've done with your sheep.
I've definitely, leadership is a big thing. I've learned so many leadership skills, how to take charge and lead a group and put pieces together to make something work, team building.
Which is really important because I think you said you were going into your junior year in high school?
Yes, yeah. It's definitely helped me, be organized, schoolwork.
Now, how many years have you gone to sheep camp?
I believe this past year was my 8th year.
Really?
Yeah. 8th or 9th.
So she must be pretty much an expert by now.
Pretty much. I watch her when she's working with her animals, and, people will ask, do you help? And no, this is really Becca's thing, and I support in other ways.
And so what do you want other kids to know about 4-H?
I want other kids to know that it's an amazing opportunity. It'll grow you as a person, and it'll give you the skills that you need to continue in life in the future.
And also, not to mention, probably once you go to college, you can tell people, oh yeah, I know how to shear a sheep.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Well, to learn more about opportunities in 4-H, you can call the state 4-H office at the toll-free number. That's 800-571-0668. That's 800-571-0668. You can also check out the 4-H website by going to uvm.edu/extension/youth. Thanks a lot for coming in today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.